What's going on, everybody? It's your friend Will. This is the Memory Lapse, and we have a bit of a Black Friday special for you today. I have not done one of these videos since closed beta, and a lot of new viewers and subscribers who have come in the last, 6 or 8 weeks since the game. Not even 6, it's probably, 6 weeks since the game went into open beta. If that's when you kind of hopped on board with Magic Arena content, then I do not blame you for not having gone back into the depths of the channel and when the audio was even worse, if you can imagine that, and seeing my thoughts on the economy of the game, just kind of the state of the game in general. So I figured Black Friday is kind of a fitting day to post a video about the game's economy, about the state of Arena and what I think about it, which is not really something I've gotten too much into on the channel. So if you've been watching this week, or at least the past couple days, you've probably noticed I left these packs here, and my attitude about opening packs was whatever, like I'll just open them and move the wheel. But the more I was doing that, the more the 5th card problem bothered me in how little I was getting. You know, opening 6 boosters to get 1 wild, maybe 2 if you got one in the boosters themselves, was, I don't know, it just felt so frivolous. It felt like I was just spewing value, and the reason for that is because the game's economy is, in my opinion, really poorly designed at the moment. And, you know, they've acknowledged that in their most recent post about changes coming in Q1 next year for the economy, but it's a more complicated problem than they can just address in a patch, right? So forgive me, the visuals for this video are not very good. I didn't prepare a PowerPoint presentation or anything. So let's just talk about, well, what the issue is. I mean, I guess if you play the game, you know what the issue with the 5th card problem is, right? Like, you get individual card wards, you open boosters, and WotC did nothing prior to launch of the game. And yes, I consider it launched. I know that there are people who go like eye roll emoji, the game is still in beta, but the game is not still in beta. Like, anyone who says the game is still in beta is buying into the rhetoric of game publishers the past couple of years of pushing out an unfinished product under the guise of a beta tag so that they can start collecting money. You know, my view of it is that if you put the game out and you're collecting money on it and anyone can install it and participate, and the game is not in beta. And because the game is not in beta, it should not be forgivable that things like the economy are broken or that there's no player progression. But you know, let's just talk really quickly about what is great about this platform and why I picked Arena to start doing content and what I like about it. And the fundamental thing is that Arena makes playing Magic feel awesome. It's such a better experience than Magic Online. I like that. I personally like that there's no trading, because one of the things I hated most about Magic Online, like, I could kind of get by on the visuals of it, and the fact, you know, all that mattered to me was that the rules worked. And in Magic Online, for the most part, you know, obviously like bugged cards and stuff that arise occasionally, you know, exempted from this. But for the most part, for the wide, for like what 99% of the time, the rules work, the game functions. The thing I hated was the economy of that game, in that, like, you had to manage spreadsheets with all the bots that had your credit on them. If you wanted to try to liquidate your cards, it was really hard. You were getting fractional tickets. They had this ticket thing, so everything was pegged to a real world dollar, but there was no fractions that you can trade of it. So you're floating. You either have to pick a bot network and only trade with that network, or you have to keep track of the number that you're involved with and how much float you have where. And just the physical act of like buying singles, I mean, I think it has gotten better now. I've seen streamers who just like have these services or sponsors who just like ship them cards all day, and, you know, whatever, like, that is its own thing. But I really, really hated that, just having to trade in that game. And so that was one of the things that turned me off on it. I like in this that I have my collection, I can build my decks, I don't have to worry about transacting with like a really archaic trade system and the bulletin boards and all that. But yeah, the important thing is, like, Arena, it feels awesome to play, but it is stifled by the way the economy kind of functions. And I'm taking this from a different angle than I think most have. Like, I know there are people out there who have said, like, don't spend money on this game until they fix this stuff. And I kind of get that sentiment, but the angle I want to take is from a developer side, from a business side. Like, what they did wrong here is they put this game out into they released it, or into what they're calling open beta, too quickly. And that's a huge mistake. And the biggest reason this is a mistake is because they are no longer going to be able to do wipes now. They, in closed beta, they lined it up so that the game, all the accounts wiped with basically what, a couple weeks before Ravnica came out. And, well, no, how did they do it? I don't know. That's not important. What's important is that they did the last wipe. The game went open beta, and now they can't wipe anymore because they have all these cards that people are spending money on collecting. There's either spending their money or spending their time, and in most cases both, collecting them. And it's just untenable to do a wipe now, and wipes are critical for changing things in the economy. So that's why when you see these posts about why they're not changing the fifth card problem yet, it's because they wrote things like, well, it turns out it touches a lot more systems than we realize, and we can't just make this change, we can't just make that change. And it's because every change they make to the economy is going to impact the financials of the game, right? If you're not familiar with how free-to-play games work, it is not the free-to-play players that keep them afloat, it's the paying players. And how do they get paying players into the game? Well, they basically figure out in advance, to the best they can from closed beta, what percentage of players are going to pay, right? So maybe they know that 10% of players pay, and 9% are just going to be free and never spend any money. They're going to grind out their gold every day, maybe do a draft a week, maybe eventually build a constructed deck, and that's it. And then maybe eventually they just stop playing the game because they don't want to spend money, but they're frustrated that it's going slow. But like, it's important that the game is good for free-to-play players. There's a lot of value in having a large free-to-play player base, mainly that it makes matchmaking that much quicker, right? You want the game to feel populated. You want events. You don't want events that like have long queue times, especially the limited time events. You want there to be a lot of people excited. And I think that's one of the reasons they've made the limited time events really cheap to enter, is to incentivize free-to-play players to come to them. It's like, oh, I can do this for like 300 gold, for 500 gold. Like, I have that, right? Like, oh, I can do this twice if I just finish my quest today. So that part is good. The bad part is that for every 10 players that don't pay, you need one player who's paying enough to cover them all, right? And so, to use casino terms, sometimes those players are called whales. So in this game, I would probably be considered a whale. Now, I've spent money on this primarily because I wanted to build decks and kind of have a collection for this channel. But in doing that, you see the diminishing returns on spending. That first $100 you spend, it's like, wow, okay, I can make like 2, maybe even 3 decks, depending on how many wild cards I get and how wisely I open my boosters. Probably the best way to do it is drafting, but I just don't have the time to sit and draft through $100 of gems to try to build a collection that way. So I just have to craft the packs. So that's my perspective on it. The issue, of course, and I'm sure you've seen other people talk about this, is that the diminishing returns as you open, as your collection gets bigger, it becomes harder and harder to collect the cards that you want. And then you're basically at the whim of opening wild cards. And the minuscule vault progress you get and how paltry the vault rewards are, it's really just like you might as well not be there at all. So you're just spending money, cracking packs, hoping that you just get the wild cards you need. Maybe you open one of the rares you're looking for. So this makes it hard for me. It disincentivizes me to like make cool decks, make funky tier 2, tier 3 decks, because it basically means I have to either spend wild cards that remaining in my account that are precious, or spend another $50 or $100 to acquire more wild cards to try to build those decks. Like, people post decks and they're like, oh, why don't you try this? Why don't you try that? It's like, I just can't. I mean, I can, but I would need to spend more money. And that's a problem. That is a big problem, because for a player like me, it should be like the economy goal should be to make me feel like I just spent 100, and imagine if I spent another 100, I'd have so much more, right? And the game does the opposite. For every 100 you spend, it just feels like you're getting less and less. And so that's one core issue there. And putting a cap on how much you're paying players spend makes the game less profitable. And that's obvious, right? And so from a corporate perspective, from a business perspective, you see WotC now still sponsoring streamers all the time, running from their official Twitch channel, like people who are paid to play the game on their Twitch channel, paying people to play it on their Twitch channels. Like that's not free. They're giving those people money. They're giving those people product, buying those hours. And if those hours don't convert into enough paying players, then they see that as, they run that math behind the scenes, or presumably they do, because any other company that does free-to-play gaming is acutely aware of every dollar spent on advertising versus how much the return on investment is from that expense. Like, they're very, very aware of that. So, if they sponsor so-and-so stream and they know that they get like 300 installs from that 2-hour sponsorship, which I guess that'd be from probably a bigger stream. Maybe they spent, several $1,000s paying someone who gets into like the 5-figure viewership to play. They get a few hundred installs. If only a couple people, say 30 people spend, and then they realize like, geez, like that really wasn't worth it. And probably a lot of those people aren't just spending 100 off the bat. They're probably spending $5, $10. Like, it's very, very easy for them to get underwater on those advertising expenditures. And those are the types of metrics that you look at early in life of a free-to-play game and say, well, geez, like, what are we doing here? Well, and this goes back to why I'm saying that they released this game too quickly. They had a lot of data, I'm sure, from the closed beta, myself being one of those data points, telling them this doesn't work. This fifth card problem is really bad, really detrimental. And they even acknowledged it, in April or May, saying, we're going to do a big economy post. We totally hear you. And it never came, and it never came. They never talked about the changes that they were going to make. And then they just pushed the game live. And so my concern is that if WotC doesn't have a wide view or a long-term view of this game, this platform, that if they continue to stay underwater, if the changes they make next year aren't enough, that they're going to look at this brand new thing that they've launched and say, like, well, this was supposed to be it. Like, this was supposed to be, Magic Online for the masses, and it's not doing it. And then that leads people to make conclusions like, maybe our market, maybe our fans just didn't want this type of product. And I think that's wrong. I think people do want this type of product. Like, you see people talking about how much they like it all the time. It's just like, you're really hard. It's really hard to spend money in the game right now because you get so little for your money. And let's talk about another thing then. So that's kind of the whole thing on the fifth. I think from a revenue standpoint, the issue with the fifth card problem. You don't want to be discouraging your players from spending money. Now, what they could have done is either accept in closed beta that the wildcard system needed like either severe changes to make it work, or abandon it altogether to come up with some kind of, to go back to dusting. And I get why. Like, I understand the sentiment of why they don't want to do dust. I get it. I personally never thought it felt that bad dusting other games, but if that's their view on it, then that's it. Like, there's really no argument with that. And they've obviously taken that stance now, but they never experimented at all in closed beta with some of the things they're talking about now. Like, well, what if your individual card rewards and your booster packs only give you stuff you don't have? Well, that's kind of like punch the problem a little bit, right? It's great for me. If that were the case, I would probably have full sets of everything at this point, between the amount of money I've spent and the amount I've played. But now you're running up against the same wall, which is you never want to give a player a ceiling on what they can spend in a free-to-play product. The point is that you always want to have something week over week that's making them itch, like, well, what if I bought this? What if I bought that? And you see games like League of Legends do this really, really well, where every week when they're patching, they're pushing like 5 new skins for 5 new for 5 champions. Every month they have a new champion for you to go buy. Tons of cosmetics, skin wards, emotes, all that stuff. They have a very, very deep hole you can go down in spending in that game. And it's, the difference between, Magic and that, of course, that most of the spending in League of Legends is purely optional. So I think this is one of the directions that I would have gone internally if I had any say in this product would be, well, sure, like, we want people to pay to collect, but eventually they hit a ceiling. So what else are they going to spend on? How are we going to incentivize someone to spend $10,000 in this game over the course of a year? Right now, like, they're struggling to get me to spend more money because I just feel like I get nothing out of it. But if they were cool, like if they had cosmetic card backs, like, virtual sleeves, the ability to full stuff, doing more full art stuff, basically like making. But what if the crafting cost of like full art to fairy was not in wild cards but in gems, right? Like, it's functionally the same as this card, so no one has to feel bad that the card that you can get for a wild card, it's the same power level. This one just looks cooler. So why is that not in here, and why wasn't that even tested in? Why wasn't it even tested in closed beta? I don't know. Things like that. The other thing, so I think that's kind of like enough talking about the economy for the most part. But I think there's a corollary here, which is player progression. And the other thing that I think will keep people from spending, even right now, people like me who are like, okay, I could spend and I could fill out my collection more, but all I can really do right now is play, play constructed event or competitive constructed event, and all that gives me is a small number of cards and the chance to win a little more gold, which I don't really want to spend at all because the packs I can buy don't give me anything right now. So the incentive to play is really more or less just, are you having fun playing Magic? And for me, beyond just wanting to create content for the channel, the answer is yes. I have fun playing Magic, but I would love if I didn't always have to do it in an environment where I'm spending gold and winning a few cards, right? Like, I would really love if they had a lot more to competitive play and play ladder here. And this, I think, is honestly has to be an issue for them that they're looking at internally right now, which is for free-to-play players, you have zero incentive to play past your 15 cards, your 15 wins for the day. And honestly, you really don't even have that much incentive past like the first 5 or 7 where you get the bulk of the gold out of it, because individual card rewards are so bad. They're just so low value. I mean, they're even lower value for someone like me, who it's like almost always a duplicate, and I'm getting basically nothing. It's just like a big nothing burger. I mean, every now and then I get something, like some random mythic that's unplayable, but they needed to really work on something for ladder play to incentivize people to like get to their first deck or get to even their first 2 decks, which might mean spending like $50. So that way they can compete. And they needed to do something here, like with ladder rankings that reset like monthly, like Hearthstone, or even more frequently, that have prizes associated with them, so that they give you a reason to play, to play these non-event, this non-event mode. And this just feels like, such an obvious miss. I mean, if I could like play to be ranked like top 100 in the game, I would play so much more than I already do. And I think that would also be more interesting for videos. Like, looking at the meta, analyzing it, like this is what people do in Hearthstone, right? You hit different ranks, you see the meta change. Now you have to adapt and change decks. It puts pressure on you to like, okay, I need to change decks, so I'm gonna buy. And I guess in a perfect world where spending money actually correlated directly to acquiring the cards you wanted, that'd be better. But even within the system where the spending of money is like just like like putting a bunch of dollars into a shotgun and hoping that a couple of the pellets hit on things you need, it's incentive enough for some people who just like want to be top 100 or top 10 or number 1 at the end of the month to spend and fill out their collection, so that they can do that and they can pivot in decks when they need to. So I don't know. I know this is long and rambly, and so it's a nice change of pace for this channel. Instead of me being like kind of quiet and barely talking, I'm just like non-stop talking. But I guess I'll recap here. So I want to emphasize again, like, my concern is that the product is good from a gameplay standpoint, but the product is bad from a watching making money standpoint. And I think that unless they have acknowledged internally that they just launched this thing and it's half broken and that are going to give it like 2 years to right itself, then it runs the risk. I mean, there's a non-zero risk that in a year they start messaging about like slowing down development of this thing because they just have hamstrung themselves in the revenue side, like really severely hamstrung themselves. And it would be interesting to hear from others who watch, like, whether you're free to play or not. I imagine a lot of you are free to play. But I'd also guess a fair amount of you have spent money, because if you're watching this stuff, you're probably watching it for ideas about what decks to make, or maybe you're like looking for your first deck, and that's why you're coming to this channel, or maybe you just like watching like medium plus gameplay, which I think I do a decent job at providing. But any system that discouraged your players from playing, like the lack of a reason to play when you're not spending currency, or any systems that discourage your players from sending, like the way that the Vault and the Fifth Card problem are now, like that's just a recipe for failure. And they really haven't even messaged much about ranked play and what they're going to do with ladders. Now, maybe we're going to get a announcement on December 6th with esports stuff, which is supposedly coming, and we'll hear a little bit more about what their plans are. But at the rate they're making changes now, you have to imagine, like, it's not going to come quickly. And I'm sure right now their number one thing moving into next year has to be the economy first. And I guess I am a little concerned that they're going to go through all this trouble to fix this Fifth Card problem and make spending and card accumulation feel better. And they're just replacing one with another, which is that, you know, there's still a pretty hard ceiling on how much a player can and would want to spend on the game. And I think that number is probably too low for their goal, or what should be their goal, which is like getting millions of people in here, hundreds of thousands, if not millions in here, playing on a daily or weekly basis. And that implies a lot of free players. And you know, I don't think that there are a lot of people who have spent the amount that I have. I would guess that I'm in like the top 0.5% in spenders. I really don't think there's anyone who spent significantly more than me, because I cannot imagine what. Like, unless I guess the one thing I'm discounting is people who are just degenerate drafters and who will just buy gems and buy gems and buy gems just to draft. And maybe I am discounting that too much because limited is one. Like, those limited videos I do perform very poorly, which makes me think people aren't interested in it. But that doesn't mean that there aren't. Maybe that just means that people are not interested in watching it. They'd rather do it. So maybe I should check in with some people. Like, let me know if you're someone who's spending like a consistent $20 a week or more drafting. Like, I would love to hear from you, because that colors the conversation a little bit differently, though not significantly differently. Because again, you can't do. You probably cannot spend as much on limited as you can on things like skins or just buying packs. Like, there still is a bit of a limit. You're trickling your spending out, right? Like, you have a good draft and you play it all the way through. You're probably still playing for like an hour and a half, 2 hours, especially in the competitive draft side, which is where you would most likely be spending the most gems. So I have to imagine there aren't people who have spent $10,000 playing this game already, which I know sounds ridiculous, but that is what you should have. You should have at least one person who has spent $10,000 at this point. I doubt that they're even close to that almost 2 months in. So anyways, I think I'm just going to wrap it up. I didn't do a good job preparing notes on this, but I just want to kind of add my perspective to the conversation, since I do kind of work in tangentially in free-to-play games and have some kind of knowledge of this from an industry side. But I'm not going to actively discourage anyone from spending money. My personal philosophy is if you want to spend it and you have the money and you just want to play the way you want to play, then you should just spend it. But if you need to be thrifty and you need to be value oriented in your spending, then you should probably wait and see or spend very tactically until you hear what they're going to do to change reward structure and how cards are just handed out in general. So yeah, that's it for this one. Please, if you haven't before, leave a comment and let me know what you think about all this and what you've spent or what you considered spending, while you have or haven't spent. Are you a draft junkie and I'm just like completely discounting maybe 25% of the players are just drafting all the time and Watts getting rich and I don't know it? I mean, that maybe that's why they're not really that worried about the fifth card problem, is maybe they just view this as a mechanism to sell people $5 drafts. I don't know. So that's it for this Black Friday special. I hope you enjoyed, and I'm looking forward to some cool conversation in the comments below. Thanks again, everyone, for watching and putting up with a visually non-stimulating video. We'll be back very soon, of course, tomorrow with more gameplay. So look forward to that if you did not enjoy this. All right, later, everybody.